All right. August 18th, 2026, 7:39 p.m. I'm going to call the Town of Willington meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. And tonight, members present, myself, Bob Shavit, Jeremy Brothers, Stephen Troyer, Becca Sinoski, Bill Burnell, and I'll see Michael Johansson for Joseph Hall. Brings us to item C, Commission Business. Review of Board of Selectmen referral consolidated school project as required by CGS 824.
Thank you, everybody. Jim Marshall, if you don't know me, I'm the chair of the school building committee. With me tonight is Scott Pellman with colleague project leaders, who's our OPM for the school building committee. And yeah, thank you for hosting us tonight, I guess. We're here to provide any update that you guys are looking for on the progress of the committee's work for a consolidated school project. And then specifically, we're here on behalf of an 824 referral, which I'm sure you're aware is, making sure that the proposed project is in conformance with the plan of conservation and development. So I'll start. I mean, we can take this however you want, but I'll start just by giving a little background on where we are as a committee. At our last meeting we've been working since January on developing a variety of consolidated pre-K through grade 8 school options in town. It's involved an extensive property search. We've onboarded numerous consultants, including an architectural team, which is not here tonight, Tech-Nine Architects. And all of that work, including extensive community outreach and workshops and community conversation events, led us to the development of 3 project options. At our meeting last week, on the 10th, the committee did unanimously vote to advance a single project option for town consideration of referendum. That option is the new school project on new parcels. Then you have some information, the proposed lots available to you in your packets, I believe.
Yes.
But it's 3 new parcels immediately adjacent to and abutting the existing Hall School site. And the project would be new construction on those newly acquired town lots as part of the project development. And then ultimately would be one unified site with the existing Hall School campus, making a much more attractive and beneficial building an exterior environment for the students in town and for the community at large. You want to go through any requirements?
Sure. Yeah, just maybe a little bit further background. Scott Pellman from College Project Leaders. So yeah, I think Jim did a good job, describing 3 parcels. We reviewed the POCD. We believe that the opportunities here for school, certainly as far as enhancing the character of the community, as I said in light up, certainly we believe the direction of the design team ultimately is going to be take draws from the existing Hall Memorial School, so the building fits the character of the community and the historic nature of that building. Certainly with the use of this land for a new school, it offers the opportunities on the existing Hall site for additional fields that don't exist right now. They have to bus students to other fields. It also still does, although not necessarily coming before this committee, but affords an opportunity with the new school going on the new land to potentially still look at the original Hall Memorial Building and potentially maintain it. If we weren't able to locate the new school on the new site, we would have to take down that entire facility to put an athletic field there to support the new school. There's opportunities the architect laid out in the diagram. You'll see a sort of little nodules along the Willimantic River. They believe that there's educational opportunities to create, potentially a path that can also be used by the public to enjoy those vistas, provide more access to that wonderful resource for this community. So we believe, versus what it's listed now as an industrial use, we believe that a use as a school is a much superior use of this parcel of land, aligning with the POCD, and the POCD also did discuss, I believe on page 70, had a nod to a future consolidation, school project, with, you know, this is is a suitable, use, makes, sense for the long-term, development.
And one of the additional advantages of these three parcels is that when combined with the existing Hall site, it allows for any work on the Hall site related to the school project to be reimbursable at the same advantageous rates that we've received for consolidated school project itself. So if it's all self-contained, it becomes a it allows for the cost avoidance of what could become no longer used for school site property, we would build elsewhere. So, if you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer them. That's been a big focus of the work of the committee for several months, is identifying, trying to resolve any former issues that were identified in the last go around by several years back, but also to get as much certainty in a project as we can in advance of any future referendum. So I'll leave it at that for now. And if you guys have any specifics, please feel free to ask. Let us know what we need.
Like, we got the listen. Didn't deep, but I just have no.
Jim, is this land currently all undeveloped?
It's all undeveloped, yeah. Okay, or not.
So no chance contamination there from prior things?
Good question. No, we've had a letter of intent on the property for several months now, and more recently, the selectmen engaged in purchase and sale. This was the former quarry site essentially, but as part of the initial due diligence that's been going on since that letter of intent was first signed, we've had geotechnical investigation done on the site, preliminary geotechnical investigation, just to make sure there's no subsurface conditions that would be detrimental, that it was structurally suitable to support a new school building. We've also done septic evaluation.
And a phase one site environmental assessment, phase one ESA, that showed no, areas of concern.
So this was former quarry?
We believe part of it was quarried off where the school is located. I think it's behind, is it Lockenstock?
Yeah.
The area behind Lockenstock appears from topography that might have been quarried out.
All right.
The geotech report, really, I think, identified native soils, and it didn't appear that where the building is being sited currently was used for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Just out of curiosity, the one sole resident that's gonna be right next to the access road have any input whatsoever?
So oddly enough, the current property owners, and Mike, you can probably speak to this a little bit better, but the current property owners have been in negotiation as part of their investment in the property. They had negotiated right away.
Yep.
So she's actually
Oh,
provided an easement,
That's
right away on that property.
curious, because I know there's that one sole house there that.
Yeah, so there's the central right of way, it's a
Yep.
100-foot, just about 100-foot easement, 50 feet on one property, 50 feet on the other. Which affords great opportunity for direct access up the river road for the parcel themselves.
None of that's a flood zone or anything back there?
Yeah, it's,
So-
the elevation is quite
Okay.
high above the building.
I think it's higher than the current elevation.
It's much higher than the current school.
Is there a lot of excavation or fill that's gotta be brought in to level that out based on these lines of?
No, it's fairly level again where the school is going to go. It's very level. We're anticipating working with the topography, the lower area, where you see parcel 10-0040D. Potentially a small field, not a defined playing field, but more of a recreational field for the school would be located in that area. But again, the majority of the woodland around that, everything offered to the Willimantic River would be maintained.
Could the could the path that the river takes behind the existing school have any impact as far as, you know, like restriction due to curvature or anything like that?
Look, the setbacks from the river are actually, if you've got the colored diagram there of the sites. The crosshatched area is the setback from the river. So any of the proposed construction, except for, corner of the fields, but that's staying out of that setback area from the river.
Further questions? No?
I have a recommended motion if you.
Yeah.
Right.
See it?
It didn't, I didn't get a chance to grab it off the printer, but I'm gonna bring it up on the screen. Slightly.
Anyone interested in making the motion?
So I guess I'll be clear, just for everybody that's here. What you're doing right now is a finding of consistency, determining whether or not the project is in conflict or consistent with the P O C D. This is not an approval of the project. You don't have site plans. That is not what's happening at this stage. So the normal development process unfolds at some point down the road, potentially.
It's gotta be voted on
Right,
first.
so you're not blessing this design and saying this is compliant and go forward. You're finding a consistency with the PCD. So I did actually adjust what they had sent over just to make it a little bit more clear. We're not approving construction. We're issuing a favorable, or you're issuing a favorable referral. So that someone seeing the motion doesn't think that the entire consideration of the project happened here with just this plan.
So I'll make a motion. Pursuant to section 8-24 of the general statutes of Connecticut, Planning and Zoning Commission finds the construction of 101,000 square foot plus or minus school located on land adjacent to the Hall Memorial School site located at 111 River Road, including the acquisition of approximately 18.8 acres of land comprised of 3 lots and related site improvements to be consistent with the Wellington Plan of Conservation and Development, and hereby issues a favorable referral.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay,
Can I abstain? I'm the teacher, I want to stay on this.
sure. You don't need to though.
No, I'm gonna abstain.
Thank you very much, everybody, much appreciated. Hopefully this conversation will continue in the months ahead. I look forward to being back hopefully on a successful referendum, but.
All right, thanks for your time. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Brings to item 2. We'll figure out how we're gonna get out around this.
But please, I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen to order since we're participating in this.
Go ahead.
Whatever, at 7:53, the 2 selectmen present are called to order. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll call it part of the Economic Development Commission.
Okay.
We have 3 members present.
Okay.
So at 7:54, called to order the Wellington Economic Development Commission.
Okay.
I'd like to hear.
Whoa, 4. Sorry.
3.5.
Can everybody talk louder? even when I watch, on Zoom, and so on, you can't make out what people are really saying, so thank you.
All right, well, everybody speak up. We're all seated relatively close to each other, so we should be able to hear each other. So this is gonna be a multi-commission discussion. That's the of Wellington's economic development strategy plan, including long-term planning, tax incentives, and fiscal stability. And we have obviously 3 commissions here. So who wants to kick it off? Somebody want to tell us maybe where you guys are at? What?
Well, Matt Clark, Economic Development Commission interim chairman, we've been without a chairman for 2 or 3 years or something like that, but, I asked Mike, to participate, and also the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Zoning Board, and Economic Development Commission get together and do a little workshop to try and kickstart a little bit some development in our town, to tell you the truth. So Mike agreed. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think the overall framework of this is, I think we have a problem in our town. We have budgets that keep going up and up and up, and we have needs that we need to meet on the part of our citizens. We have mandates that we have to do in the state of Connecticut. Our expenses keep going up. And as far as I know, I've participated in a lot of these discussions over the years, but our growth has been pretty much non-existent. I mean, our grand list has grown like a 1% or something. It's down this year, I think. It's here, Mike. I don't remember exactly where it is, but it's down. I think it's a couple of tenths of a percent. The revenue went up a little bit because they had the rejiggering or reconfiguration of how that's done. But in essence, we're pretty flat. And we've had budget seasons. We have documents here that Mike provided having to do with our budgets and what's happened and the percentages and things. But we've now had 3 years of budgets where we've not approved it on the first ballot, the second ballot, or the third ballot, or at least portions thereof. One way to go about this is to simply ask people to pay more money. That's difficult. Another way to go about it is to cut. I was a selectman. Well, you're a selectman. Mike, you're a selectman. You were on the board. You were chairman of the Board of Finance for years. That's very difficult as well. Another way is to grow. So it's, however, on our a couple of years ago, last year or the year before, we proposed a very, very tentative, very small effort to provide some kind of incentive for development of a solar field. Actually, it wasn't for solar field, it was for anybody, but it was the immediate application would have been a solar field. That was voted down in town meeting. I know that business people want to be able to know that if they're going to locate someplace and spend, $7 or $8 or $10 million on a development, facility, service, whatever it is, that they have some degree of partnership with the town that they're going to locate in, or the city, municipality, the county. We don't have counties here, but Connecticut is a slow growth state, very, very slow. Other parts of the country is growing. Here it's very, very slow growth. And yet our budgets, go up pretty consistent. So because we're slow growth in Connecticut, what growth does happen, there's a lot of competition for it. So if someone wants to, let's say, build distribution center, okay, fine, but a dam, I don't know, I mean, a big hotel, a tourism center, housing, whatever it is. They have different places that they can go to do these things. And we're surrounded by Vernon, Towland, Mansfield, Coventry. Most of these places, Stafford, Mike, you can speak to this. Most of these places have some degree of incentive for business development in their towns. And Wellington does not. You know, Bill and I have had various conversations over the past 3 or 4 years about his experience in developing a intermodal distribution facility. Big, large operation in Massachusetts that provided lots of tax income for the town that they're located in. And
Property that's referring to the town of Palmer. And the land that was developed by the Palmer Redevelopment Association, was owned by a gentleman by the name of Tom Barrett in Palmer. And his property had the railroad running right through. So in 1986, we put up our first 40,000 square feet. And the rail mergers that occurred, especially coming out of Canada, really enhanced the opportunity to grow the concept. So then the propane guys came in and the lumber guys came in. And the industrial park is about 4 miles from the Massachusetts Turnpike. Today it sits at around 240,000 square feet. You know, I sold the business. We were the second largest taxpayer in town of Palmer. And the 30 people who work there all live within 5 miles of the place. And I'm happy to say right now, they all have about 19-year tenure. So, yes, we did get a TIF. Yes, we did have a partnership with the town, with the redevelopment association, with the fire department. 20 stories there. But the concept is you have to welcome business. They have to establish a partnership because you're taking a concept that you think you could build a business based on the rail. And it was a perfect spot because every 3 trucks that come into New England bringing food, booze, and clothes, there's only one going out, loaded. We have a huge imbalance because we don't make anything. So we took all this Canadian business that came down by the rail, and they wanted to move it. It was green by rail. And we were able to balance the transportation end of it. My point being is we're not seen as being open for business right now in the town of Wellington. And a lot of that has to do that we can't provide utilities, can't provide sewer, can't provide water. So someone who's going to come in and spend $10 million like Matt is talking about is not not even getting the bare essentials from his or her investment. That's a big roadblock when you're still trying to build something, hire something, buy equipment, market and sell, and you don't know if your town's behind you or not. Hard to do it. Sorry, look, a little verbose, but
that's okay.
The concept is, and you have to look at, are we open for business? And then we have our own financial problems that we have to deal with. When we were putting the executive, my last comment, when we were putting the executive plans together for the summary, and I know Matt, the mill rate in 2025 at 33.89 is a 5.4% increase over 2024. My numbers could be a little. The next 2024 was a mill rate of 32.15. And the mill rate in 2025 at 33.89 is a 39% increase over what it was 12 years ago in 2013. Those are real numbers. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Well, one real fact though in Wilmington is that we have not engaged with any landowners to identify any properties that could be developed.
Well, we know which ones are for sale, you know, they're.
Yeah, but that doesn't count. You know, I've talked to people that have wanted to bring businesses to the community in the past, in, 10 or 12 years ago. And they wandered in and it was like, so what have you got for me? And it's like, well, there's an awful lot of open land. Why don't you start asking around and see who will sell you a piece of property? And this business wasn't that large. He had a woodworking business. He had 8 to 10 people working for him all the time. And he just says, well, I'm supposed to go out and find out who wants to sell me a piece of property. I mean, that's not how this works.
Not only real estate agents know what's listed.
So it's like, we're not even in this, if this is a race, we're not even in the starting blocks.
You also gotta have an idea what you want in your business. Obviously, we had
Yeah.
that giant distribution center coming here a few years ago. We all know how that went. We heard the public comment
Absolutely.
and many iterations of the public hearing as it was kept open and we must have had at least 400 people talk,
Yeah.
through that. I think it was crystal clear what their thoughts on the matter were on that particular project. Same time, we put in a cannabis dispensary that didn't last, there's a lot of competition for those things around now too. Like up in short ways away in Massachusetts, Willimantic, you go over to Manchester, you go. So, there's no guarantees there, a little tiny business isn't gonna move the needle here on what we're talking about.
And that's exactly right. I mean, we're
That's
talking
part
about
of the problem.
a large problem here. You mind, but
And in the last meeting here, we just talked about something that'll move the needle maybe that much.
Right.
It's got a little bit of substance to it.
right.
And he was willing to work with us. We
Yes.
kept putting things back to him
Yes.
saying, okay, hey, we want this. Okay, we'll do it. Hey, we want this. And that was as.
But it's a good location for that.
Oh,
If
yeah.
it all pans out and they do everything, they're in a really good spot to make that work.
He was willing to play
Yeah.
ball.
I think we need someone to really act as chair, regardless of what board or commission you're sitting on, so that all of us have an opportunity to raise our hand, get an opportunity to speak. I think that would be good. Walt, you're sitting in the middle.
I'd be more than happy
Good.
to do it.
I want to go back and touch on a couple of things and that have been stated already. Yes, the grand list made a hell of a jump after reval, but that's not an improvement in the overall grand list. That is a result of the change in market values of properties. The grand list is stagnant. That's a given. Okay, the numbers attached.
Yeah, there
to
haven't
it.
been a lot of houses built or anything here in recent years.
No, there's no major subdivisions in the
Yeah.
pipeline. Go back to we don't know what land's available till the for sale sign pops up. Well, that's too late. You need to be sitting with property owners because a lot of times those for sale signs are not there because they've contemplated settling for years. It's because the patriarch died or they got too old and had to move to a different place. They're more or less, in a lot of these sales, they're forced to sell. Life circumstances for the owner has gotten to the point where the property is too much and it goes for sale. It would be nice to catch some of those people before it gets to that point. And look at the sale of Ace Equipment's property around Hall's Pond. I'm thankful that stayed in the community as far as ownership. I don't know why it was sold, but that was a quiet deal. I don't think anyone knew that property was for sale. I didn't. Mike, maybe you know some more about that than I do.
I think that's actually an example we're talking about. That was a conversation that was of mutual benefit to the buyer and seller that evolved over time.
Yes,
It wasn't a property on the market that was incentivized or attracting
but there's,
development or interest. It was
yes,
a quiet deal that was the right deal for both
and now
parties, and
what you,
probably a good deal for willing to do as far as preservation
correct,
of the
and that's how I
pond
do
all
that. Yes.
Right.
What you just acted on previous tonight actually will hurt our grand list. Because now you've taken 3 parcels that are gonna come off the grand list because they're gonna be town-owned properties, assuming the school goes forward.
I thought about.
You're gonna lose tax revenue there. So, you know, we need, number one, we need to look at what parcels are developable, what they're appropriate for, and engage the owners. And see if they can be enticed to consider something.
So far, the focus here, I agree. The focus here has been on supply. Supply,
The-
get with the owners beforehand, supply, get with the owners beforehand.
Mhm.
Now we need to think also about demand, the other side.
Let's talk about this a little bit. Who gets with the owners beforehand? You have to have somebody interested in a business first. Before you, we're not gonna approach them and say, hey, so
No.
what are we gonna do? Nothing.
How about, is there some way that
Yeah.
we could reach out to realtors, people that might be involved in an earlier stage? So that we could be aware of, things that are happening?
Realtors are the second step. The first step is a property owner that's amenable to the possibility of selling their property. That's step number one. Step number two is going to engage the realtors for sure, because they're the ones that are going to help market it.
Mhm.
But we have to know what we can market it for, what the community would accept in whatever the location is.
Yeah, it's my understanding that Mike and Matt, and the rest of the committee, they have been looking at properties, what's available. And are there some people that are kind of sitting on property? They don't know what to do with it, they got it there. And if somebody came along and said, would you ever consider developing this or selling it? They may just be amenable to it. So that's one of the things here. We can't make new land, but we can create an atmosphere where people begin to think about selling.
What about querying people that are along main drags, like on 74,
That might
32,
be it.
focus on that and perhaps, enough people ask, maybe stumble upon something.
Because some of their homes are sort of a liability being right on that main drag, and so if there's extra property there, they might be on with it, but it's not up to me, but it's up to the rest of the committee to take a look at the properties. But we do have to increase the number of properties that are available.
We have to look at the large parcels that exist north of FedEx. How
We
many
got
acres?
Ruby Associates back in there and stuff like that too, like that's a lot of land.
Mike,
I think
percentage of 21,000 acres are zoned for commercial development?
You've asked me that before, it's like a couple of percent. It's less than 10%.
5%.
Yeah, it changed a little bit when we did the South Wellington Village Zone, because that encompasses a number of parcels, most of which are already developed, but it's well under 10%.
Yeah, it's not significant.
So I think. Well, myself, before I got into office and just about every day in office, have been thinking about these challenges. Building some tax revenue, and Mike and I have a lot of conversations about, even like when we've been looking for grants to study various options. I met recently with the executive director of the Mansfield Downtown Partnership, which many of you will remember was created originally as a private town and state partnership to develop the what they call downtown stores across from E.O. Smith. And over time, Mansfield has remade the purpose of that partnership. Now it is it has care for all of the economic development in the whole town of Mansfield. And I met with the executive director a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about a myriad of different issues, because my feeling was, when I reached out to him, was how do we get a conversation going across towns too? You know, how do we, because we all know the biggest economic engine in our neighborhood is Yukon.
Not by far.
And so if we can start having, if we can start a conversation with a neighboring town, do we at some point build a relationship that down the road gives us something we can partner on, or something that, even something we can get the heads up about is coming. And there, we covered, because obviously we're not in a position to actually start something ourselves. It just was lunch table conversation, but we covered topics all the way from all of the things we're talking about here to the water connection from the pipe that's in front of Hall School south to the Mansfield Town line, where the same water company has a pipe going up Route 195. And that's something Mike and I have spent a lot of time talking about, because that mile of missing pipe is a potential to grease some of these skids we're talking about. So we don't have control of the demand, but we can provide opportunities, incentives, or whatever. We can welcome that demand. The demand comes from the business market and all sorts of other things.
UConn may want like more housing though. That's we gotta look out for them, like more apartment, houses, things
Well,
like that.
there is a lot of housing going in up there. And so I think that might be the kind of thing that's a great conversation between Mansfield and a town like Wellington.
You look at the standard that they just built, and they were having trouble renting some of it, but
But they're getting ready to expand it. You've seen them cut the trees on the next parcel now. And they're having a battle with the water company right now to make sure that they have the water supply they need for that next phase. But the conversation could even be something to the effect of, well, Mansfield is building a lot of sort of student focused, more premium type housing. There's a big incentive for a developer there, because renting to the students is like the highest per bed, highest dollar per square footage, because you're renting by bed. And but the state and the grants and the other demands that exist are for not that level of housing. But it might be for housing that still is connected to UConn, because maybe the employees that work in the dining halls or clean the buildings or mow the lawns at UConn are not going to ever live at the standard, but they may need housing in this area. So is there an opportunity to do housing? I don't know, let's say where down in South Wellington near the Mansfield line or Route 32, that is of a lower level, that's not intended for students, intended for young couples starting out, new families, single people who are employees at the university in those type of jobs. And then it also meets the state's requirements that we work on a housing plan. Where are these sort of synergies and those are things that we could use potentially for incentive or to grease the skids to get something going. But again, those have to be in the right places. That has to be on a transportation line, maybe, it has to be on the bus line to UConn to get those employees to work, which the south end of Wellington would be on or adjacent to the bus line.
What's the net effect on our grand list that, because you'll have like kids in these places need to go to school, so that, there's a certain, demand on town services and everything. It's not, it doesn't come with no trade-offs.
Right. Yeah, comments over here.
Walter,
Yes.
what I was gonna add, Mike, you're right, UConn's a driver for sure. But the other one that we can't forget about is I-84.
Right.
We have become, and it's gonna pain me to say this, but we've become the tractor trailer center of northeastern Connecticut in many respects. It's my neighborhood, I grew up there, I despise that fact, but nonetheless, it's an economic advantage to the town of Wellington. And we can't lose sight of that. That's one of the few, 84 is one of the few resources we can mine for development.
Is that where a distribution center goes?
On that point.
No,
Go.
yes, we gotta kind of reckon it.
Right.
But good.
I'm sorry.
Joan, who was first, Joan or Bill?
Joan.
Bill wanted to say something.
On that, on Ralph's point. The existing FedEx building and business was originally
Roadway.
RPS. And they wanted out of Hartford Yeah, without the 25 mile radius of the Teamsters office that was down there, but I-84 is very pivotal for either RPS or FedEx, but the need is a lot of these locations are around large colleges across the country, because a lot of their help is part-time based on peak flows, and they want to have a student. So there's a need right there, or there's an opportunity right there. And when you look at using college as a mainstay.
Well, one of our town employees
I'm
works
very,
at FedEx. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm very leery at this point of pushing for housing. Housing,
That was just an example of the
if
ideas.
you bring in the young families, they bring the children. Their taxes don't begin to cover the cost of educating a child. So our base has to be to build up a commercial base so that we have the income to be able to support the children better. So that's it. Yes, I-84 is very important to us. Well, we do have the figure someplace of how many cars per day. And for that reason, I think we need to talk about, building along that area. The water situation. And when you dug for the school, they found gravel, which of course is all glacial gravel along the rivers in Connecticut. And that is a source of water itself. It's a very good source. I lived in a house for 30 years that had a point in the ground, in the gravel, and we never had a well. We pulled the water out of the gravel directly. Places can do that. Last weekend, we just happened to trip across a brewery, of course by accident. And we found out that I asked, where'd they get the water? Because they're in the middle of no place up in New Canaan or someplace like that. And they are all on well. So water is a problem, and getting something a really intense one. But we can't say that we can't have businesses because of the water. We need to pursue getting more water, but we can't negate anything just for that reason easily.
I don't think anyone would. I think the point is that if we evaluate, if we know demand comes from somewhere else, and then we evaluate what are the things that we can do to grease the skids, we say, okay, maybe city water is one of the way. If we can't do city water, what's another thing? And that really what motivated this whole conversation tonight is the potential of the tax incentives or exemptions or whatever words we're going to use.
So I think we need to, or the town need to come together and say, are we open for business? Some people in our town don't want to have anything. All I want is houses, and not that many of those, and they're fine with it. Other folks are like, no, we can't keep going this way. We're going to need to have some kind of development in our town to raise the grand list. It's all, and that, in my opinion, it's only going to get worse from here, because you're going to have more and more mandates. And I would like to see us be able to do something for the fixed income folks as well. Right now, that's completely off the table. It's a quandary. And one of the reasons why I wanted this group to get together was to say, are we open for business? Are we open to have this happen? And if we are, then can we try and come together and decide on some ways to promote this? And that's tools. We have no tools regarding how to get people to come to our town. And that, as Mike said, was the tax incentives or stabilization or something like that.
All of the above, actually.
Yeah.
Mike Mansfield situation. Are there statutes that allow towns to create development? Like the Wellington Development
Yes,
Association.
yes.
Okay, that's the entity. And I think they might be somewhat independent.
Yes.
Mike, you could probably, you could speak to that if you understand some of those statutes. I haven't researched it.
Probably the CMDA, Connecticut Municipal Development Authority. Was created about a year ago, and they can direct funding for development. You don't have to have a town center, you just have to dedicate, you have to designate an area. And actually, a partnership with CMDA makes the town eligible for an additional 5% of reimbursement for school projects. But you have to be able to say, we're gonna do development here. Dense development, very not traditional, sort of what we would think about with what you look around and see here, types of development. They want to be able to say, we're gonna dump a bunch of money here and they're gonna build stuff, not 12 units or a Dollar General, or so that's the sort of the trade-off. But that structure was created about a year or so ago. It was started as MRDA, MRDA, they changed it to CMDA.
We have that big black area in the middle of northern Wellington on the map. What do we have there?
The
Purple?
oh
Purple stuff. Well,
okay.
I'm colorblind, so it doesn't matter.
Oh.
That's a spot.
Yeah.
We could authorize the development agency, association, whatever.
There's also,
Authority.
also the idea of a TIP, which is a taxing district. And those are for very, very large projects. I mean, there's one side of this we can go for the state regulatory way of going about things. And that's the CMDA and the TIF and all that sort of thing. And another way is just simply, looking for developers to come in and putting together, as has been stated by the different people here, putting together developers that we're going to need and our landowners. But even at that, incentives will help, as Mike says, greasing scale along, because we're competing with other towns. And they have these tools and we do not. And it's a problem.
On my way here this afternoon, one of the things I considered, Mr. D'Amato, when the zone change occurred for Lowe's, what happened to the property owner's property taxes? The day after that zone change was granted, their property taxes skyrocketed, but nothing was done
For years.
for several years.
They have to carry it.
At that point in time, if a developer has their eyes on a piece of property, and they either want to go for a zone change, or the ownership would change if they acquired it. Now, a lot of that big open land is in open space, forestry or something like that. If they purchase it, it comes off those tax rolls, does it not? And it's going to get taxed at a higher rate just for undeveloped land. We gain a bonus there, but we didn't gain the big bonus.
Right.
Why don't we just split the difference in the tax bill for the period of time from when they acquire it to when they get their CO? We're going to make up on a big development, Lowe's, Ted, just the permitting fees alone were a bit of a boost to the town of Wellington.
Yeah.
So there's a spot where you're not penalizing Joe average homeowner in the town of Wellington by giving this corporate entity a tax break on a piece of land that they're in the process of development. It doesn't hurt us. It doesn't hurt any one of us in here paying our tax bills, but it will help us down the road because it's going to enhance the grand list. That's one methodology that should be considered, I think. And you can step that in a variety of ways too. Yeah, so you gradually increase their taxes until they're full built, rather than do it smack as soon as the closing on the property occurred. I know property owner for Love's went through the ceiling when she got a tax bill.
She probably didn't know. She had no idea.
Well, she didn't have a clue that was going to happen, but the assessor was watching it, I'm sure.
In the case of the truck wash, the guy bought the property, which wasn't,
Sorry?
It's residential.
it was residential. And we changed the zoning on it
We did the same over.
through the process. There's no reason why we can't do that other places.
We just need to know about those properties ahead of time.
Well, they normally come in already, that's the way it's worked in the last, when we've done it, they come in requesting a zone change.
Yeah.
Because they wanna see if you're gonna do it in order to move forward with whether they're gonna do anything with the business or not.
Right.
So,
But you don't have to burden, my point is you don't have to burden the residential property with a commercial zoning change ahead of time. Do it at the right point.
Well, we did, that was done on the west side of 32 many years ago. That was all changed to design commercial. And the residential properties along that stretch were supposed to have their taxes frozen at R80 rates. I don't understand exactly how that worked out.
well, we could do that as a town. We could just simply say we want to change the zoning treatment of these parcels, these areas. And then we can pass an ordinance or a regulation that indicates that that'll stay static until it's developed.
Actually, the Board of Selectmen statutorily has the ability to adjust assessments. Believe it or not, I'd have to dig it out.
I don't know the details of that. Yeah, I think, I mean, to your earlier question, I think from my point of view, yes, we need to do things to say we're open for business. Absolutely. I think one of the tools we have to have available is some means of managing the tax bill, whatever we're going to call it, whatever the details end up being. I think the trouble that it ran into before was just maybe understanding a couple of the nuts and bolts of it and what the sort of risk management was. And one of the things was, I think that threw people off was the different types of approvals.
Yeah.
And I've learned over time that some of that is built into these systems typically because the developer feels there's a certain amount of risk in waiting to then have to go to a town meeting and determine that they're not going to get what they were hoping for because the townspeople are upset about it. Now, on the other side, the townspeople can be upset about that theory because the townspeople want to say, wait a second, that's our privilege. So I think that push and pull has to be figured out, and we have to come up with an amendable plan. I think there needs to be some kind of incentives, but it has to, how you address the sunsetting of it. There was just talked about whether you stagger it up or whatever has to be addressed somehow. For example, we do have a couple of properties in town that already have a unique ordinance for them. Willington Woods is an example. And that tax incentive was based on the original agreements with HUD and the developing of the property to allow a more economical rental environment for seniors. So there's good reason for that to exist. I wasn't involved at the time, of course, with any of the housing authority or anything. Probably HUD expects that to get involved in these things. I don't know. Some people in this room may even know that answer. But that they have a very favorable control on what they're taxed at Willington Woods. And actually that's up for renewal. And I'm sure it was the right thing for Access to do. They sent a note and said, hey, why don't you just sign that for the next 40 years? Which, I mean, hey, someone, you got to try to make a deal. Someone's got to ask, right?
We got to see them on Board of Assessment Appeals or.
And of course, I reached out to the town attorney, made sure I was understanding what I was looking at, and said, I'm not just going to agree to sign another 40 years of tax break because it was at the same level was negotiated for day one 20 years ago. So it'd be 60 years cap tax. So we have to figure out how to manage these things.
And this is an example. The power to manage that process resides with the Board of Selectmen.
It resides with for that one piece of property, it resides with the first selectman only because that's the way the ordinance was written. And there's a unique ordinance for that one property.
Right.
So we are going to need a system that's easier to manage. We can't have a separate ordinance for every property. And we can't have a thing where somebody says, oh, well, the lawyer sent it to me, it must be right, and signs it, sends it back, and then writes off 40 years of taxes.
No, that's not good. But all these things are open to us to decide as a town. I mean,
Yeah.
we can structure this such that, for example, anything over $10 million, that needs to be unanimous on the board of selectmen. Or that we can write it in that everything needs to be reviewable over after 10 years. You can't go longer than 10 years. These are all variables that we can work with as a town to come up with something that is going to spark development, get us going in the right direction, increase our grand list, increase our ability to spend and meet the needs of our citizens, and at the same time, not tying us up and stuff. I get it. I would be afraid of someone becoming a board of selectmen and they're not qualified to do this kind of thing. We can write it such that the risk to the people of bad decisions are limited. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think that's what has to be done, is we have to do a little risk management.
Yeah.
And we have to also understand that the developers are doing risk management. So we gotta find a synergy.
Their risk management is, I don't want to invest a whole bunch of money without knowing that, what's going to happen.
Sure, what my carrying costs.
2 years from now, I could be ready to go, and it failed at town meeting. I just blew 900 grand
right
on nothing, and they're not going to do it. They're gonna go, no, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go somewhere else.
And from what everybody says, we've got this crown jewel piece along the 84 corridor, one of the last pieces. And now there's a negative connotation because all these other bigger companies are like, why is this still sitting idle? How is this possible that this last piece that's got 84 access and such, there's nothing on it, but it's for sale?
Who's the current owner?
Which one are you
The
talking
one
about?
that, the one that was going to go for the distribution.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's still there.
That's also a piece of property that's not that easy to build on. It's sometimes.
Right.
No,
That
correct.
hill, it's not that desirable for.
Right.
But if somebody was willing to, then now not, if they had that access, how do we unwind that so people just don't focus on that? So if we added a whole bunch of commercial real estate, DI, we got this whole plethora, but then people are like, all these parcels are vacant. Because we're so stringent on what as a town will.
If you remember,
Right, and that goes back to the open for business.
There was a lot of discussion on that site about the geology of that land and the water and everything. That was some of the biggest concerns that were brought up when the public hearing was going on.
But that's a piece of property that's in a residential zone. Again, I'll go back to the 300 some odd acres north of FedEx that's already zoned industrial, and what are we doing with it?
Yes.
If we're not having the same success that some other towns are, should we try to model ourselves on some of their successful their points, way that they're approaching things? Does that make sense?
It's a very, very good thing to do, but it's going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable. Because other towns are making choices that allow developments to happen quickly and create as much of an assurance as possible for the developer. And that's just not how things are set up here. So we could certainly emulate that. And that's what people are looking for. I've met with a lot of these projects. I've had different people reach out, different people ask, met with a very prominent regional developer who has done work all across Harford County on the Barnini parcel a year ago. And he brought with him all these printouts of all the, all the stuff. And he said, the property owners asked me to take a look at it, and I'm gonna see if there's anything I can make work. And if I think I can make a run at it, I'll be back with you. And he never came back. We have things in our regulations that make it really, really hard to make a project financially viable. And on top of it, we can't even create an ordinance that would be incredibly risky to a developer because they have to air their financial laundry to the entire community. There's just the bright spots that normally I would point to and you know, I'm, well, in a lot of towns in this area in one way or another, and it's a challenge here. We have this big piece of property, but basically everything is going to require a public hearing. And that is a lengthy, expensive, and very risky process. The other thing we know about that piece of property in particular is that you have the FedEx property line, which makes it really hard to get a building in where it needs to go because of where the wetlands are. It basically splits the property into two. And so it makes it really challenging to get a really viable development there with the other utility work and topography and all, you know, the water and fire suppression that would have to be put into it. But there's a lot of levers that the town can pull. The question is, can we get to a place where we can confidently say that we are willing to pull all of them?
The other thing is, I don't know if we really are in a position to spend some of the money towards developing this openness. You know, the resources that would be more encouraging to bring other businesses in, a water line or, you know, an incubator or, you know, we're looking at schools, we're looking at fire equipment, we're looking at firehouses, we're looking at all these things. We're having trouble dealing with the effects of inflation on our budget, which is probably the most reasonable increase that you could anticipate. Inflation, you know, that's out of the ordinary, and we can't even deal with that. So trying to reconfigure our approach to business costs money. It's the money that we have.
Can we look at stuff instead of, it just sounds like everyone's like big business, big business. What about the cottage industries that are taking off all over? Is that something we could look into and have smaller pieces of it? Smaller places that can do more of a cottage.
I think those are always welcome, but they don't move the
They're
needle.
not gonna move the.
They're not gonna.
Yeah, they don't produce.
And yeah,
much
that's
for
nice to
job
have
or
them,
tax.
they add to the quality of life, you know,
Yeah.
especially if local support them, you know, you got too many microbreweries now, too many, you know, some of them got, yeah, some of the things are just overfilled. Yeah, we have this village district now, but there's been no interest really in that because you have a lot of other options.
Yeah. I think I think in the short term, this conversation should be continuing on maybe some tweaks to the tax thing, trying to get us closer to getting the tax thing passed.
I agree with that.
I think that's a great tool for us to be working on, and it's something we can have control of and we can work on right now. Requires minimal resources, you know, we don't need big money to do it. So I think that can be a first thing. I think there are some other conversations, as Mike hinted to, that may be a little more difficult for a small community like this. And that might be how we can make processes more nimble. So that someone can look at it and say, well, okay, I can borrow or risk a certain amount of my money to get this process started, but I'm not going to spend 2 years trying to get to the finish line and then have to start investing to do the development itself. So I think, you know, some of those conversations, and I think there are even going to be things, and I know I'm sure someone's going to skewer me within 3 hours on Facebook for this, but we're going to have to talk about things even like blight. And I know those are incredibly painful conversations for some people, and I understand it. But we are blight. We are not going to bring businesses to town when we have, I can't even say it without swearing, when we have the crap that we have next to Dollar General and Dunkin' Donuts. And the house that's across from Hall School. And I don't want to be getting into people's yards and telling them how many unregistered cars, like I don't want, you know, I don't want to go down that road, but we're not like that mess by Dunkin' Donuts is discouraging.
Yes.
That's discouraging to development. It's discouraging to all of us who have to look at it every day.
And it's intentional.
We need tools to deal with those things. And we need to hold people to a certain standard that will also help them have a better environment, which will make their property more valuable. Like it can all work together if we do it right. You know,
Blight ordinance,
is growing. That's the
both residential and commercial.
And there were a lot of houses that are in tough shape down right now, and it's growing.
Right, and you know, then some people may not have the money to fix them up, so we have to be careful about what we're doing.
That's.
We have to be careful, but we also have to have the conversation.
Yeah.
You know,
You have to be careful, and.
Yeah.
And that means, well, I don't know how you do that, because on the one hand, you're giving people the power to be able to do something.
Right,
And then
when I was.
Don't do it.
When I owned my first house, I had to get one of those town supported rehab loans to make the repairs to the house. There was no money for me to pretty the thing up. And I don't want to be making things worse for people like that. But we've got to be able to control some of these things, and that will make the environment better for everyone in the neighborhood, including these things we're pursuing.
Can I?
No, are a lot of these houses unoccupied? And if they are unoccupied, are they paying taxes or not paying taxes?
We have very high payment. There are 3 houses, there are 3 properties coming up for tax sale this week. That are on the revenue collector's website. There are 3 properties. And they actually, I think 2 of the 3 are occupied even. You know, so there's other reasons that I don't know why they're not paid. But it's not about a property being abandoned. It's about the people being unable or unwilling to make the repairs.
Well,
I may
Mike, you were gonna say something about.
I just wanted to read a couple of just quick data points. Just as far as tax payments, just to give you a sense of some of this information. So Dollar General pays annually, and I'm real estate, rough numbers, about 30,000. FedEx is a little over 500,000.
Yeah.
The standard, so it seems to be something everybody knows. They're around 1.6 million. So
Mansfield.
yeah, I mean, so that
That's
there's a
what
little
moves
bit
the
different.
needle though.
Right, but you're talking about this is, which I got, Sherry, the increase this year was $671,000. That's approximately FedEx, right? So the largest taxpayer covers your one annual, but we've had this conversation in other towns, and sort of the smaller projects are important because they're quality of life projects, but you need, like, we don't, even if we put multiple on each property that we have in town, we can't get at a Dollar General, 9,000 square feet. You need like dozens.
Right.
And so, you know, the intensity of the development, I think, is something that needs to be discussed, because our regulations are very restrictive, even in how we allow people to build on properties that are already zoned commercial. So the DI zone, for example, still has a very, very low lot coverage standard, which means we're still going to lose that property to industrial development, but most of that property will just be left in the fringes.
Unused, yeah.
And so if we're going to focus development in some area, we should allow efficient use of land so that we're not pushing that development elsewhere. You can probably get, between some of these parcels that have or have been considered to be zoned, you can probably get maybe 3 to 4 FedEx sized build square footage, right? So you're talking a couple of $1 million in revenue from that amount of square footage across multiple parcels.
Right.
But you've got to be able to create a situation with the regulations that
Makes it possible.
Yeah. And
Make it financially viable.
Right.
Or financially interesting.
Right.
yeah, and with children, I know that's a concern for a lot of people. If you keep the bedrooms to 1 to 2, even 100-unit development, you'd be lucky to see 7 kids. And pretty much every town in Connecticut is dying anyways.
Yeah.
So you're not replacing the kids that you're losing. And at some point, it becomes more expensive to have a very small district, as I'm sure Jim can explain, because just because you lose a kid or add a kid does not mean the budget goes up by that equivalent. So at some point, and the reason where I'm going with this is that Tolland, which is very open for business, has very wide open tax incentive policies. Essentially just says the town council can give you a tax incentive if they think they should. There's no parameters. They had a study done a couple of years ago and about economic development and grand list growth. And the finding really for them was multifamily development is the way you continue to not lose grand list, because you don't really have anything that's viable from a commercial industrial standpoint. And to Matt's point, you're fighting with everybody else to get the very dribs and drabs that are happening anyways. But housing is something that everybody is talking about. And so if you can find a way to get housing growth, doesn't have to need sewer and water. Those projects are very expensive and can grow your grand list pretty thoughtfully.
They also don't go away.
They do
That
not
actually go away a year and a half. They could be
Right.
gone.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so there are some other options there, but from my perspective, I don't really push some of this stuff with the commission because number one, as we've learned in the past, I don't want to bring this up, but also we need to know that you guys want to take it the distance before I'm going to put the energy into certain amendments or recommending how we might talk about these things, but we certainly can do it if we
Like
want.
multi-occupancy housing and everything, though, it's either gonna be student or you gotta have jobs to support a place full of people. Like, where are they gonna work? How are they getting the jobs? Is there public transportation out of the place? We're miles away from Hartford, that's a long ride if you're heading that way to go to work, why wouldn't you live in Vernon if you're gonna, So, there's a lot of thought goes into this stuff, like in terms of what you're trying to create.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the board of selectmen being only one, but I would say from my point of view and from sitting in that office every day, I'd love to see us get moving on getting the some sort of a tax incentive exemption plan back on the, back into public hearing format and getting us back to seeing if we can get it passed. I'd love to, I'm gonna continue every day working with Mike and the legislators and the grants and CROG and all these other things that are always emailing us with ideas to try to see what we can keep chopping on. I would love it, I would love to see if there are opportunities within planning and zoning to have some more nimble regulations.
I think there probably are.
Well, we still need to revisit SDZ.
Yes.
We need to
What's the
massage
status on
that. I mean, that was something that
Empty chapter.
shouldn't have gone away.
It's an empty chapter,
But,
really.
Well, we need to look at that, yes, but we need to look at some of the other things that like with the commercial, like how much of the land can be developed and everything, don't make it where it's not worth it.
well, one of the biggest things I think is just a matter of re-educating the people in Wellington. Because at this point, nobody wants to give anything away. And if you want to attract a business, you're not going to attract them by not giving anything away. You don't have to give the whole. You have to offer them something.
But it needs to be a
That's
simple
been
way to
really
do it. It can't take forever to make the
Yes.
decision. It's gotta be
Right.
put in the hands of some people you trust and know what they're doing, because it just can't be like discussed forever. You miss the opportunity.
Oh, they'll discuss it forever on Facebook.
Whatever. I don't get involved.
And 99% of it wrong.
I don't get involved in that.
Well, I don't either, but unfortunately, a large percentage of the people pay attention to that.
And the
And-
difficult, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I mean, and I don't do social media. And when somebody hands me their phone, there's three things I can count on when you look at social media. Lies, half-truths, and fibs.
In a difficult area like that DI zone up by FedEx, would that be a good application for SDZ?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Give them a chance to,
No.
make a measured commitment without having to.
And this is where Mike and I probably disagree, but the SDZ, when we had it in place, is one of those things that you think you've thought the thing through until the gorilla walks into the room and it's like, I'm 1.5 million square feet. And it's like, oh, well, before we really move forward in this, could you explain to me where all your rainwater is gonna go? Because when you get an inch, it creates 1 million gallons of runoff.
That's a lot of proof.
So
Hey,
when I personally, I think when we redo the SDC, some of it has to be tied to the square footage of the proposed building, so we can get a little bit more detail about some of these aspects that kind of, you know, and when they said 1.5 million, I said, oh, wait a minute, acre feet, how many gallons of water is that? And it's like, well, if you get, you know, you get an inch of rain, it's like, wow. And of course, they're not gonna address that. So, but things like that come back and all of a sudden, this thing that you thought you had in a box, the foot doesn't even fit in the
But
box.
at the end of the day, the process worked. They went through the
Well,
whole
it did.
thing.
Oh,
and-
absolutely.
Is there a warehouse there?
No,
Yeah.
right,
It worked.
but again.
It wasn't fun.
Revisit it, you know,
It's real.
as you move through this stuff, you keep getting smarter,
Yes.
you know, and you realize where your errors were.
Yep, yeah, there's room for improvement.
Oh, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I, believe it or not, have a 9 PM commitment, so I'm going to bow out, but I hope this gets us moving in the right direction. I hear a lot of consistency in wanting to figure out how to come up with these incentives. It would be great for me in my day-to-day scratching my head, you know, to have more opportunities for us to talk about.
You want to close your meeting with the other selectmen?
Yeah, either that or I'm gonna leave and we won't have a quorum anymore, so.
What I am hearing and what I think might be good, sort of things that can run parallel. Because the EDC has focused on the tax stuff and the SDZ and the strategic plan. And the tax stuff is really a Board of Selectmen thing and the SDZ is really a P&Z thing. And I think that projects that, it's likely that a project might need one, might want, you know, they could. So we can begin the conversation regarding that and begin the conversation about the tax stuff, sort of run those in parallel. Just, I'm trying to leave here with a couple of things that we can move on so that I have at least some homework items and.
Yeah, this should definitely not be the end of the discussions. I
No,
think
no,
I brought some good things up.
Well,
here tonight.
can we talk about, you know, time when we can get together again? The three.
We should.
Well, I think I'd like to move. I think more of these conversations are good, but I think we need to move past conversation and get pen on paper and tweak the. You know, take what you brought to the town meeting previously and come up with a couple ideas on some fine tuning and get that back in the public conversation. You know, I think there's a lot of agreement here and there's a lot of opportunity to do things, but I don't think we need to wait for another multi-agency committee to do
You
that.
guys
That's
get
just
that,
one idea.
well, we get that back in front of a public meeting or.
Yeah,
you know,
right, or even back to, you know,
Town meeting.
they can go to all
Yeah.
this group by email
Yeah.
and say, here's where we are,
Right.
you know, and get some input.
Well, I think at the last town meeting, it was informative just to have those two conversations about the cameras and then about the farm subsidies. And there wasn't any decision to be made, but people were able to, you know, bounce things off. And I think you come away with a list of things that might be worthy of moving forward on.
Yeah, I think you've seen Andy Marco particularly has really pushed for the idea of having more items on town meeting calls that are discussions,
Yeah.
which is the model we're trying to do more of. Because exactly that, like with the camera thing, people didn't feel like they needed to convince everyone what their vote was gonna be that night.
Right.
They could just have a conversation,
Yeah.
like the risks were lower that night because you're just having a conversation, and I think it was very effective.
Well, it keeps the heat down.
Right, well, it allows you to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Didn't help the temperature in the room though.
Yes. Oh, it's not that. It just, I'm gonna move that we adjourn, because I'm
Okay.
leaving.
All right, have a good
At
night.
8:58.
Second.
All right,
Thank you.
all right, in the meantime, Joan,
No, my only thing is that it seems to me like what I'm hearing here is that we have to look at the pathway that any business goes through to be able to buy land, be established, et cetera, and what are the roadblocks that they hit in this town? And try to begin to resolve those. That seems to be what I'm hearing from all over the place.
that's definitely part of the conversation tonight.
Well, that's your job. You gotta get that done.
Well, that's,
Yeah, right.
we get zoning to look at.
I
Gotta
can give it
take
to you.
another look at that.
This is good. This.
Yeah.
is one.
But Mike, but I probably use this stuff to look at. some
Yeah,
parts
a
of
good
it,
winter,
right?
you know,
Yeah.
things are sort of quieting down, so we'll get it on an upcoming agenda. and start.
Please, like, you know, good spirited discussions around this stuff, and like, does it make sense if 2026?
Yeah.
Mike.
You wanna continue the conversation, what do you wanna do here?
Well, we gotta look at some of our regulations, you know, that is, we can start looking at that stuff and have our discussions about whether they make sense, still. You're gonna take a look, you know, that this, Mike just said a little bit of that tax,
Yeah.
abatement,
Yeah.
you know, deal. And I don't know, maybe we should get back together like, November timeframe or something. A little time for some of these things to happen. I definitely think it was productive.
Yeah.
Conversation here. You know,
Thank you everyone for doing it, appreciate it.
At least we got some thoughts, we see where people are coming from here, nothing sounds unreasonable that we talked about tonight.
Well,
I didn't hear any
recognize that-
anti-development talk, I hear, you know, we just have to be careful what we're doing, and it does need to fit with, you know, the P O C D and what the people in town want, obviously.
And most importantly, it's gotta be acceptable by the NIMBYs.
No, they're not in my backyard, yeah.
Alright, so I'll move to adjourn the Economic Development Commission.
That's what, I'm sorry,
All
we're
in
gonna
favor, say
continue
aye.
on with the rest of our
Aye,
agenda.
aye, aye.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Bill. Is,
Well, you got the buzzer.
Yeah, you're all done. We're gonna just carry on here with
the rail.
we have zoning
Have any
still.
No, I know.
What rails up there?
We have a
It's the
new house
fire.
going up on Moose Meadow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's, 8
It's owned by,
acre property.
Genesee and Wyoming.
Riverfront
Genesee and
property.
Wyoming,
It was on sale for God only knows how many years.
they always.
I never thought to, one man did. And he talked to the owner, and the owner said, you send me the check for $1. And when I die, it's gonna be probated and it's yours. And he waited, in about 3 years, the probate called, and he had 8 acres for $1.
Well, good for him.
And he's building a house, and he has a dock for his kayak.
That's awesome. He's a very sharp lady.
And I eat my heart out here. I go, what?
Sometimes you get lucky.
Isn't that
Yeah,
amazing?
that is, that's great.
Concrete.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
All right, good to see everybody. Let's, we're gonna go back into zoning here.
It's a perfect spot for a little industrial.
All right, item D, other business.
I didn't prepare anything because I figured this was gonna take enough time.
Okay, which leads us to item E, public participation. It's not listed on the agenda.
Thank you, guys. Val, thank you.
Do we have anyone?
Anybody online?
Anyone here? Yes.
Jeff Summers, Margaret, it was a good rigorous conversation. I wanted to say, throw a million things in, so, you know, that's,
Mike, are
you going out to
the techno?
No, it was a good conversation. Sorry. Yeah, it's a good conversation and a good start.
yeah. I think so, I mean, I think that with the SDZ and the issues with the, 26 football field, large building, it was more. They didn't know who the suitor was. People didn't know who the actual X factor was. And at the same time, it was the second quarter of the year. Amazon had a $2 billion shortfall in their profits. And they shuttered all their sites in Connecticut almost. I mean, I know they left, electricians were kicked out of the playing field.
I remember the playing field issue.
So, so I think that, we should remind ourselves what the atmosphere was right then.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Which brings us to item F. It is 9:03 PM, meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
That was a good meeting.